Well, joining us now is Senator Gary Humphries, who chaired 3 inquiries into the forgotten Australians. Senator Humphries, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Pleasure.
So just tell us, who fits into this category of these so-called forgotten Australians?
Well, essentially these are people who were, during the 40s, 50s, 60s and so on, were children in institutional care, orphanages, children's homes, sometimes foster care, but mainly in institutions throughout the length and breadth of Australia. And does also include, in some senses, the child migrants who were sent out here from Britain and Malta after the Second World War, most of whom ended up in institutions as well.
So you've chaired 3 inquiries into this group. What are some of the stories you've heard?
I was involved in 3 of those inquiries, not necessarily as chair, but what I certainly heard during those very horrendous hearings in some cases were stories of enormous abuse. These children were often neglected. They were often the subject of terrible mistreatment, sometimes sexual and physical abuse. They were made to work at a very young age. Frequently they were deprived of contact with ones that they loved. They didn't have toys. They weren't given access to human comfort and love. And it left a huge scar on a huge number of people who went through those institutions. In some cases, people came to the inquiries and told the story for the very first time in their lives of what had happened to them in those institutions, maybe 50 or 60 years beforehand. So the inquiries were very important in bringing into the public domain the stories of these children, of whom there were almost 500,000, and making the rest of Australia understand how important it is that we take some step towards giving these people a sense of acknowledgement and restitution.
Do you think a formal apology from the government is going to help people heal?
I think it's extremely important in helping people to heal after those experiences. These children were made to feel that they were excluded from Australian society. They were outsiders. They were in homes, it seemed to them, because they'd done something wrong. And so it's very important to say to these children, you did nothing wrong. You were the victim of very unfortunate circumstances and you are full Australians, and we acknowledge the hurt that you have experienced by making an apology to you at the very highest level.
And do you think that there should be some talk of compensation for these forgotten Australians?
Well, in some states there are now compensation schemes for people who've been through those institutions, although most states don't yet have that. And I think that part of the process of acknowledging and apologising for the hurt that was done needs to be a scheme for restitution and compensation. In a sense, you can't compensate people for lost childhoods, but you can make some kind of payment to acknowledge the very serious damage that was done to the lives of these people. So that, I believe, is an important next step. The apology is a great first step, but it does need to be followed up with stronger action, particularly by state and territory governments.
Why do you think it took so long for these stories and this culture to come to public knowledge?
It's a very dark chapter of Australian history. We'd like to think that we looked after our children, that they were cared for in these places, that they were places you could take a child to if they couldn't survive in a happy family home. And some children did have experiences that were relatively wholesome, but many didn't. They experienced terrible, shocking abuse, and it's unfortunately the case that we haven't chosen to acknowledge that as a society until relatively recently. We need to do that now.
Senator Humphries, just to wrap up, do you know any details about how the apology will be delivered? Will it be similar to the apology to the stolen generations?
I believe that the apology will be determined after consultation with the people themselves who are in those institutions. That's an appropriate way of dealing with this issue. I hope that it's of the same order of importance and significance as that was given last year to the stolen generation. It's a way of being able to acknowledge that these people, of whom there were a very large number, deserve the very highest level of recognition by the Australian community. So I hope it's a parliamentary apology in the House of Representatives with both the Prime Minister and Opposition Leader participating.
All right, Senator Gary Humphries, thank you for your time this afternoon.
My pleasure.